Sears in the 1960s accounted for 1% of the US gross national product. It was the retail industry. It was the retail industry. And in fact, in the 1980s, they were 10 times the size of Walmart. Yet today, Walmart is well over 10 times the size of Sears, the dominant retail player pretty much on life support. Pan American Airways in the 1940s had 100% of the Pacific market, 90% of the Latin American market, 50% of the Caribbean market. They were the airline industry. But because of deregulation, increased competition, and the Lockerbie disaster in 1991, Pan Am ceased to exist. Howard Johnson's restaurant, my favorite. Howard Johnson's, the restaurants. People don't realize that in 1960s, Howard Johnson's was larger than KFC, Burger King, and McDonald's combined. They were the food industry. They were the largest provider of food to Americans, actually second largest after the US Army. So we look at the leader in the retail industry, the airline industry, and the food industry, and it raises an interesting question because we're always asking the question, how do companies go from good to great? I'm actually very interested in understanding what has companies go from great to gone, from best to bust. And here's the key. It is not about being the biggest. Innovation is not about new products, new processes, new services. It's actually none of that. Innovation is about adaptability. It is about speed. And because speed is so important, I'd actually like to try a little bit of an experiment with you right now, if you're okay with that. I need everybody to grab a sheet of paper and a pen. You cannot do this with a computer or a tablet. And we're going to have a competition to see who has the fastest brain in the room. Anybody think you have the fastest brain? Any volunteers? Alex, I know you think you do. So I'm just going to get a little water here. Because what I have in my pocket here is a sheet of paper. This is a test that was developed by a colleague of mine, Scott Halford. And Scott is a neurobehaviorist. Basically what he does is he studies the brain. And he developed this test to assess the speed of the brain. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read you a long list of numbers. Your goal is simple. You want to write down as many of the numbers as you possibly can. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I've done this exercise with well over 100,000 people. So far, no one has gotten every single number correct. Here's the reason why. Just like the real world, you get interrupted. You get a text message, you get an email, you get a phone call, someone bangs on your door. I'm going to interrupt your thought process. I'm going to read you a bunch of numbers. I will give you a command. I will read you more numbers, another command. The person who gets the most numbers correct and writes down an appropriate response to each of the commands will be deemed as having the fastest brain and will get a prize. Need a little water because once I get started with this, I can't stop. All right, here we go. You ready? Grab your sheets of paper. Here we go. 27, 88, 362, 45, 97, 168, 12, 19, 47, 392, 855, 1,682, 11, 15, 19. Write down a color. 475, 622, 12, 19, 27, 683, 484, 15, 19, 20. Write down a piece of furniture. 465, 72, 83, 144, 56, 88, 275. Write down the name of a genius. 675, 82, 354. Put your pens down. How many of you got all the numbers correct? You got? That's right, because we can compare notes, except we got a little bit of a problem. The sheet of paper I'm reading from is completely blank. I have no idea what I just said. I need everybody to stand up. If when I asked you to write down a color, when I asked you to write down a color, you didn't write anything down, you wrote down the word color, which is cheating, or you wrote down red, blue, green, or yellow, please take a seat. Okay, we lost a lot of you. I'm feeling sort of in this area, we got maybe a couple of purple or pink. If you had purple or pink, take a seat. I sort of felt that over there. Very good. Black or white thinkers, if black or white, take a seat. Okay, orange, brown, take a seat. Everybody stand back up. If for the piece of furniture, you didn't write anything down, you wrote down the word furniture, which is way too complicated, or you wrote down sofa, chair, table, desk, or couch, please take a seat. Okay, it's early in the morning. I'm thinking somebody had bed. Anybody have bed? Good. Stool, maybe? What did you have? Footstool. That's sort of a stool. Okay, everybody take a seat on that one. And the last, actually, everybody stand back up for the last one. When I asked you to write down the name of a genius, if you did not write anything down, if you wrote down the word genius, or you wrote down Einstein, take a seat. All right. We got some people still standing. All right, time for some honesty. Not a lot of people, though. Did anybody write down your own name or the word me? Anybody? Oh, come on. There's always somebody in the crowd. Excellent. Well, everybody take a seat at this point. Here is the point of this exercise. The point of this exercise is very simple. Expertise is the enemy of innovation. Expertise is the enemy of innovation. Here's what you need to understand. The brain is not wired for innovation. The brain is wired for survival. And so the brain in its infinite wisdom assumes that everything we've done previously has kept us alive, therefore we want to perpetuate the past. And so what it does is it will build these neural pathways, these grooves, these deep grooves to things we've thought about for a long time or things we think about frequently. So for example, red, blue, green, yellow, these are the primary colors of light and paint. These are the first colors we were taught as kids. We've thought about them the longest. We have the deepest neural pathways to those. How many of you, by a show of hands, you don't have to stand up, how many of you, by a show of hands, had Einstein sitting in either a red or blue chair? Einstein sitting in a red or blue chair. Look at that. Probably about 30+% of the audience had pretty much the same answers. So we're pretty predictable as human beings. So if expertise is the enemy of innovation and the brain is not wired for innovation, it's wired for survival, what do we do about that? Let me give you a couple of examples here to help us sort of rewire the brain a little bit. If you go to a drugstore and look at the toothpaste section, one of the things you're going to find is that pretty much every toothpaste these days claims to whiten teeth. And the way they do it is through either a gentle abrasive or through a mild bleach. A group of experts in the UK were trying to create a whitening toothpaste that didn't use abrasives and didn't use bleach. So think about it for a moment. If you're trying to solve this problem, the natural way we'd think about it is we'd say, how do we, the experts, create a toothpaste that whitens teeth without abrasives or bleach? That's the logical thought process. And they went through this process and they didn't get anywhere, and then they eventually asked a different question. And this question is a very profound question. It's an extremely simple question, yet is the key to accelerating innovation. Instead of asking, how do we, the experts, make a whitening toothpaste, they asked the question, who else makes whites whiter when they're not using bleach? And the answer is laundry detergent. As it turns out, the company that was working on this toothpaste problem had a laundry detergent division, and in the history of the company, the two never talked to one another. They thought this would be a good time. So they go over and they ask them, they say, hey, when you're making whites whiter and you're not using bleach, how do you do it? And they were told something fascinating. They were told, we don't. We don't. We make whites bluer. Laundry detergent is blue for a reason. The blue dye creates an optical illusion, an optical effect that prevents the reflection of yellow. Your clothes are still dingy yellow, you just can't see it. And they thought this was a pretty cool idea, and they went off and they created a toothpaste that those of you in the front can see has a blue dye in it, much like laundry detergent. And it creates the illusion of whiteness instantly. Now, I don't share this with you because I think this toothpaste is going to revolutionize the universe. It is not the greatest innovation, but it is the greatest innovation process. Ask yourself, who else has solved a problem like this? Not this exact problem, but like it. Instead of making teeth whiter, who else makes whites whiter? Let me give you a couple of examples of some interesting breakthroughs that were developed by looking in different places. A potato chip manufacturer wanted to reduce the fat in their potato chips. And so what they wanted to do is they wanted to cook the potato chips the way they'd always cook it and somehow shake off the fat. So the way they tested it out is they created a little mini production line, deep fryer, conveyor belt that shook the potato chips, and a bagging station. So they cooked the potato chips, put them on the conveyor belt, the potato chips would dance up and down, the fat would come off. They get to the bags with one problem. They were crumbs. They were dust. It was potato dust. So they asked the question, who else vibrates something very fragile without breaking it? Think about it. Who else vibrates something very fragile without breaking it? So in this case, they did not find a solution from a food production engineer. It wasn't even an engineer. It was a musician. A musician, a bass player, who realized that when he plays his bass, he could feel the bones in his head vibrate. So he went home, cooked up potato chips, put them on a drying rack, put a loudspeaker over it, played with the frequency and volume, could see the potato chips dance, the fat fall off, and the potato chip didn't break. Solutions can come from anywhere. They can come from anywhere. In fact, there was some interesting research done by Harvard Business School where they looked at 17,000 different patents. 17,000 different patents. And what they realized was that of those patents, most of them are what they call derivative or adaptive patents. That is, they were built on some past innovation. They weren't new, but they were sort of a continuous improvement. And in almost every situation, that innovation was solved by an expert in the domain in which the problem was solved. So if it was a chemistry problem, it was solved by a chemist. If it was a biology problem, it was solved by a biologist. But what they found was that the breakthroughs, the radical changes, the game changers, in 100% of the situations were solved by people from a different area of expertise or by multidisciplinary teams. And this is really interesting. In fact, 3M did a study which found somewhat similar results. They looked at their product portfolio, and they looked at the products that they create and the revenues that get generated, and they broke them into two broad categories. One set of category of products were products that were developed by an expert. So adhesives, like Scotch tape. A product that was created by the deepest expert, an expert with 20 years of experience in adhesives versus someone who might be an expert in reflectives who brings that solution to abrasives and to other product lines. And what they found is that it was that second category which created by far the most revenue for 3M. So expertise is the enemy of innovation. But the problem is, therefore, we are creating solutions based on the past, but the breakthroughs always come from other areas. So I want to give you just a couple of other quick examples here of how this comes into play. So a computer chip manufacturer wanted to reduce the bubbles in the manufacturing process. There's bubbles that get in the silicon chip in the manufacturing process. So they were trying to figure out, how do we stop this? And they talked to all the production engineers, and eventually they talked to someone completely different outside their industry, Dom Perignon. Experts in bubbles actually knew what eliminated bubbles, and they changed the production line based on what they learned from the manufacturing of champagne. Car manufacturers, if they want to reduce road noise, they don't add more insulation, which reduces the gas consumption because it increases the weight. They actually talk to people in acoustics, noise cancellation headphones. A lot of the new cars now have active noise cancellation that eliminates the noise. So we can find solutions from pretty much anywhere. I'm going to close with my favorite example. This is called pumps and pipes. Pumps and pipes. It is a group of cardiologists who get together on a regular basis with people from the gas pipeline industry. And what they do is they share what they've learned about the cardiovascular system and how to apply it to the transmission of gas, and vice versa. And what they have in common is it's all about the transmission of a liquid through a tube. Now, this is really fascinating. I mean, you think about it. I mean, now we've got somebody who's in the area of biology and physiology talking with people who are in hardcore engineering. But the solutions are actually quite profound. For example, one of the big issues in the gas pipeline industry is gas pipelines, they crack, they break, they leak. Finding the cracks and sealing the cracks is really complex. But you get a paper cut, you don't go running to the doctor. The body heals itself. They've now developed an inert coagulant ingredient that goes inside of gas pipelines that will actually seal the cracks and then radio signal back so they need to do a more permanent fix. So that's a solution that came from a completely different area. And what I love about pumps and pipes is what I call a purposeful tangent. I want you to really get this concept, because this is a powerful concept. Purposeful tangent. A purposeful tangent is basically, if you think about it, you probably spend close to 100% of your professional development time with people who are similar to you. If you are an accountant, you go to accounting classes. If you're in sales, you go to sales classes. If you are in the hospitality industry, you'll go to hospitality conferences. We will study and read and learn from people from our areas of expertise. And I'm not saying don't do that, but I want you to maybe find a percentage of your time, 20, 30, 40% of your time, where you actually learn from people who are in an adjacent area. It's not random, it's a purposeful tangent like pumps and pipes. I will give you my purposeful tangents because I think they're so powerful. So I've been researching, working with companies, and speaking about innovation for over 20 years now. I no longer go to innovation conferences as an attendee. I've actually determined there's not a lot of innovation in the world of innovation. I've also found that if I'm doing what everyone else is doing in the world of innovation, I'm not innovating. Replication is not innovation. So instead of studying innovation, I need to know what people are talking about. But I don't go deep. Where I go deep is in neuroscience. You heard me already talk a fair amount about the brain. I like to talk about psychology. I like to study psychology, sports performance, and my latest favorite is magic. I love magic, because magic is amazing. If you think about it, magic is about visual misdirection. I mean, we see something happening. We cut someone in half, yet they didn't die. How did we do it? And I find this to be really fascinating. So what I'm always looking at is, how do I start connecting to people who think differently than I do? And so I want to pull this all together with a couple of thoughts. Innovation is not about size. It's about speed. Unfortunately, expertise is the enemy of innovation. Why? Because the brain is not wired for innovation. The brain is wired to perpetuate the past. It is designed for survival. Therefore, to overcome this dilemma, we need to ask the question, who else has solved a problem like this? This will give us breakthroughs. We've seen this over and over. And I also want to encourage you to engage in purposeful tangents, because purposeful tangents will give you the chance to learn from people who are in areas related to yours. As I said, my purposeful tangent is magic. I love magic because it's all about the brain, because the brain easily gets fooled. We can't necessarily trust what the brain tells us. For example, the cup that I was drinking water out of is empty, of course. But what if it was never a cup? Your purposeful tangents will help you find breakthrough solutions. And to me, what I love about magic is, just like innovation, it's all about making the impossible possible.